Order, would you please rise for the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, we're going to begin with a presentation from Chris Turner, Principal on Special Assignment, and Kathleen Tuttle, Director of Assessment. They will be presenting information regarding Future Ready Goal number 5, readiness for college, career, and life. You have the floor. Thank you for being here tonight.
Good evening, school board directors, President Marquardt, Dr. Dent. Again, I'm Chris Turner, Principal on Special Assignments, and with me is Kathleen Tuttle, Director of Assessment. She's here because she really knows the most about graduation requirements and all the data and our stuff like that. So it's kind of like my backup.
Would you like to come sit up here?
I promise you she doesn't have to.
Any, don't want to do. I just welcome to. You are.
We just have to be able to hear you on the owl.
Look, you're walking so well now. Welcome.
I heard that, yeah.
So today I'm here to talk about our strategic goal 5, readiness for college, career, and life. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here and share this information with you and just get on going. It means a whole bunch to be a Sumner-Bonney Lake School District graduate. Earning our diploma means students are prepared for their future. Our graduates are equipped with the knowledge, skills, and thinking ability to enable them to be successful no matter what direction that they choose to go. Our portrait of a graduate provides a clear outline of the expectations of all of our graduates, and our bar is very high. We're committed to ensuring that every student makes it across the line, makes it across that high bar. This graph shows the increase in graduation rates since 1970. The top green area shows where we stand in comparison to the state with our on-time graduation rate. On-time meaning graduating in 4 years. Last year, we were 9% higher than the state average, with 4% less dropouts. Please notice down at the bottom, the state graduation dipped between 1990 and 2000. We went from 77% down to 70, and then it actually took to 2013 to get back up above 77%. Some reasons for that will be revealed later in the presentation. Through this presentation, you'll see these themes. Students are learning more and at higher levels than ever before. And they're graduating at higher levels than ever before. This is directly related to the tremendous work we're doing district-wide to serve our students. While we're consistently graduating over 90% of our students on time, some are still not making it. We continue to strive for and focus on the last few percentage points. The overall purpose of today's presentation is to share the goal that we have set to reach our long-term goal of 100%. We always want 100%. So you know what we're doing to get these results and how we're continuously working to improve and capture that last 9%. While we have a long-term goal of 100% graduation, this is a promise that we've made to our community and our students, and it applies to all students, not just 91% of them, all of them. This is our promise, clearly stated in our strategic plan. Our promise in the Sumner-Bonney Lake School District is to know, value, support every student, helping them graduate ready to pursue a promising future. Those are strong words. It applies to every student, regardless of their starting point, background, or circumstance. You've all seen this before, and I know you understand that it is at the core of everybody that works in this. So, goal 5, future ready. Readiness for college, career, and life. Our goal is every student will successfully navigate the critical transitions in their schooling and will graduate from high school ready for college, career, and post-secondary experience. By 2026, 98% of the senior class will graduate on time. And the other side, the right-hand side of that slide, is our step progressions that we're going to take to get there. A tremendous amount of work goes into students and graduation. Obviously, it takes 13 years for us to get there and more for some kids. Goal 5 focuses on these key areas: 9th grade on track, transitions into kindergarten, 5th to 6th, and 8th to 9th, graduation pathways, and school improvement plans. Through this presentation, I will talk about each and how they're integral pieces for us to accomplish our goal of 98% in 2026. As a district, we have a deep commitment to ensuring every student receives an equitable education. And it's a through line for all 5 of our strategic goals. That's the next line. This is what equity looks like with goal 5. Every student receives equitable access to experiences crucial for success in college and beyond, and meets or exceeds Washington State college and career readiness graduation requirements. So when we talk about graduation, equity in action looks like we should not be able to predict the odds of graduation based off the color of a student's skin, the amount of money a family has, sexual orientation, gender identity, or religion. There should be no difference in any graduation rate between any groups of kids. For example, our low-income students should be graduating at the same rate as all of their students. So policies, the relationship to graduation and policy. There are many policies and procedures that impact students graduating. Here are some of the policies in the 2000 series that have a direct relationship and an influence on graduation. These are not the only ones. As you see from the policy title, you can totally see the impact that they have. One thing I really want to point out on this slide is that all the policies from goals 1 through 4 are foundational in graduation. That is where the major work happens. They underpin graduation. Without that work, our students aren't going to get there. So those are huge goals, and goal 5 is passed. Budget. There's no graduation budget. You know, money used for graduation comes from a variety of different budgets. I listed out a bunch of budget items that directly and significantly impact our graduation rate. These are also items that some people might think that we could live without, that they're not super important, because we don't really need advisory, do we? Every one of these items significantly support and contribute to students graduating. They're very important. So here's the outcomes for this evening. We're going to learn about how we're fulfilling our promise. We're going to explore goal 5 through our 4 PLC guiding questions, identify how the 4 pillars in our strategic plan are woven through the work, and understand the complexity and structure of our school system. How graduation supports and interventions are woven throughout our work, and some of the specific steps we're taking to provide students the support that they need to graduate. What I want you to get. Okay, first question. What do we need to know and to be able to get our students to 98% graduation in 2020? And there's a lot of things that we need to know and be able to do. To start with, we need to know our why. Why is graduation important? This is where we really need to start. When students don't graduate, they're 3.5 more times likely to be arrested, 8 times more likely to be incarcerated. Approximately 70% of prison and jail inmates do not have a diploma. Significant increase of high-risk behaviors, and there's extreme bleak economic social prospects. It's really tough. Kids have to graduate. It's a moral imperative that we educate our students and that they graduate. We have to do that. We need to know what we're preparing them for. They're preparing them for a lifetime of their earning potential and how it's tied to their education level. The average life expectancy of an American is 77 years old. Average graduate is 18. So that's approximately 60 years that we're preparing students for the next 60 years. And we're doing that before their brain is developed. And also when they're semi-engaged about how important it is, because lunch is coming up, right? So the average number of jobs Americans have is 12 or more in their lifetime. 2 out of 3 jobs available today require post-secondary education or professional skill set. This here is a graph of the US median household income in 2021. This is information kids need to know, and this is information we need to know because their education is important. We also need to know where the jobs are going to be in the future. We need to know the education levels that these jobs are going to require, as well as where the jobs could be, what career field. The top graph, this top graph here, you've seen it before, it was on the Goal 4 presentation. It shows job growth from 2010 through 2016. And the red line, the bottom line, that is jobs that require high school education only. The number of jobs increased, it's increased by 1.4%. The middle line is jobs that require an AA degree or skilled labor, skilled workforce, and they've improved 172%. And the top one is jobs that require a bachelor's degree. And those have increased by 4,500%. They have massively increased. Our jobs are requiring kids to get BA degrees. Or at a minimum, some other kind of education and need a skill set. The bottom graph is the projected mid-level annual job opening. Mid-level is you have an AA degree or you have developed a particular skill set. You become an electrician, something along that line. These are the jobs that projected openings, and you can see where they're at. We need to know this because we're providing students with the skill that will build the foundational knowledge to be successful in these areas. We're training them for the future. We constantly need to be moving. Otherwise, we may be training them for jobs that won't exist when they're actually arriving in the workforce. We have to be on top of our stuff. Another thing we need to know is the importance of on-time graduation. What does that mean? On time means kids graduate in 4 years. That percentage is the benchmark that we're using to measure what we're going to talk about in this presentation. It's one that's used across the board. But it's kids who graduate in 4 years. However, students come from a large variety of places and have many different things going on in their lives. This includes traumatic events, homelessness, food insecurity, and many, many other things. Every student may need different supports to walk across the stage and to turn the tassel, including additional time. So some students may need 5 years, some 6, and some 7. On time is an important measure, but it really pales to the actual need to graduate. Whether they graduate in 4 years, 5 years, or 6 years, graduating is what's super important. What we're using on time is our measurement. We really want to increase them all. When I look at that picture, and I see all those kids that have taken a convocation a number of years ago, will all those kids graduate? Yeah, they will. Will they all graduate in 4 years? I don't know. If one of them gets cancer and misses a year, they graduate in 5. They graduate. That's what's super important. I just want to keep that perspective. It's super important. Okay. We need to know the things that impact our students. We need to be able to meet them where they're at, provide them the support they need with the impacts that they are experiencing. These are ever changing, and we always need to be on our toes. This leads me to our first activity, what I'd like you guys to do. What you're looking at is a picture of two seniors from Sumner High School in 1989. I did not look up their names.
Really hoping it was
But
someone in
they have
this
great
room.
hair.
Yeah, he's kind of looking around.
Okay.
So, what do they represent at the time? So, think about the stuff that they were dealing with in 1989 in relation to life and school. And then compare that to what students might be impacted by now in 2023. Go ahead with your partner around you. Make a list of some of the things that they were dealing with that now and some of the things students are dealing with now. What were the ones in 1989? That's when I graduated. That's why I can use that date. I know. I'll give you a minute.
I graduated in 19. When you graduated.
Yeah, they just had hair.
Yes.
I'm saying that had an impact. I'm trying to think of anything.
I remember, but it's been there years.
I got. That time.
Okay, I'm sure we could talk about this a lot. What are some of the things you guys came up with? Kevin?
Just trying to remember 1989. It's not really clear in my memory, so I was struggling a little bit with that.
Anybody have? 89, you graduated in 88?
I graduated in 88, yeah. Well, some of the things you have on this list over here for 2023.
Are you cheating?
I'm cheap. Because I'm from the 80s, we could do that, I'm moving forward. Sort of moving back, because we also had these stressors. Drugs were easy to get in the 80s. There was gang violence. I grew up in Federal Way, there wasn't a lot of it, but I certainly saw it on the news. And I remember kids getting killed for their Air Jordans and their tennis shoes, depending on where they lived. I think it was in 1993, not that much further, there was a drive-by shooting right in the front of the SeaTac Mall. I was in college. The SeaTac Mall. So, I mean, we have a lot of stressors too, but I did like the fact you have all the social media on here. I didn't have that. I'd go home and I'd forget about people at school until I saw them the next day.
I think that's a great point. It really depends on where kids grew up and where they live and what stressors are there. But if we look at 1989 to 2023, kids are impacted by so much more and at such a greater depth, right? If we just take internet and computers, social media, the rate and the intensity of kids and information and hazing nowadays and bullying, how that impacts them every second, not just when they're in the building. There's access to information, violence on the internet. Kids see things that they should not see. You can't unsee it once you see it, right? There's things I don't look at because I don't want to see it. And they have access to all this. There's email, text, how many after messages. So their phone is blowing up in all sorts of different directions all the time. What about school shootings, right? They're prevalent. We find out about it. If it happens this afternoon, we know about it and it impacts our life, even if it happened on the other side of the United States. I didn't have to worry about school shooting. You know, the stressors are bigger. Kids have to manage more in today's world. So the kind of the point behind this is we need to know all these things. They impact students' ability to learn. It impacts their ability to learn. Schools now have to address things they didn't have to address decades ago. Schools and teachers need a bigger toolbox. a higher level of skill, and they need to be able to focus on the whole child, not just academics. Some examples is teachers are teaching coping skills inside classrooms in daily lessons and mixing it in. They have to keep up with technology and incorporate ever-changing technology into the lessons. Shoot, they have cell phone rules in classes that cause all sorts of problems and disruptions. You know, a kid gets a text and all of a sudden it goes crazy in the classroom. And here's the big one. They have to do lockdowns and even normalize lockdowns. You know, that lifts up the level of anxiety. And when your anxiety and stress goes up, that impedes your ability to learn. And all this is happening in our schools. Yet I want to come back to, students are learning more and graduating at greater levels than they ever have before. And that talks to us about the skill set that our buildings and our teachers have every day that they're using with our kids. We're doing an amazing job. So another thing we need to know is changing graduation requirements. Up to 1990, graduation requirements were determined at the district level, the local level. In 1991, Washington State decided that students need 19 credits in these particular categories. That's when that came down. And then in 1997, the state said, you have to pass the WASL, right? That's the first of their standardized tests. They upped the bar in a way, right? And so when I talk about the WASL, let's just look at our history of state testing. It has been the ever-going wheel. We have the WASL, we have the HISP, end of course exams, balanced assessment. Now we have graduation assessment pathway. Every time there's an assessment change with the state, it impacts graduation requirements, how we teach, and what kids are needing to do to graduate. It keeps changing. The schools have to keep on top of that and also be teaching forward during that whole time. And we have. We're graduating more kids than we ever have, right? I do want to bring back to that graph I showed earlier. That dip between 1990 and 2000, that happens just to coincide at the same time that these credit requirements and state tests were being a coincidence, correlation, probably, I don't know, but it's super interesting. The whole thing took a dip, took us a while, and then we started running back up. Right. Here are a number of other things that have changed since 1991. Each impacted graduation and the work we're doing in our secondary schools. The items in blue are currently checkoff items that are required for graduation. The high school and beyond plan, that actually starts in 8th grade and is continued all the way through, required to graduate as a senior. It's now 24 credits are required to graduate. We have six classes, 4 years, total of 24 credits that all kids can earn. So if they fail one class, they're automatically credit deficit, they're behind. So they have to pass everything or make up something if they fail. Graduation assessment pathways. So depending on the pathway, that just changes the credits that you're needing to graduate. One pathway, you might need 2 credits of art. Another, you only need 1, but you need 2 credits of a world language. So depending on your pathway, that impacts your graduation credits. We have to stay on top of that. We need to know what works for what kid and make sure that we are supportive of each kid finding their pathway through. More things we need to know. We need to know how to use our data. We are data rich. It informs us where we are, how we're currently performing. It's used to progress monitor towards goals and identify areas of need. It measures the efficacy of our interventions. Here, what's listed there is you see just a number of data that's used in everyday life in the buildings. We look at the data and we make decisions from it. I'll be sharing much of this later with you, and you'll see how we're using some of that data. So being on top of data use, so we're no longer saying, well, that feels right. We make database decisions. We need to know what is currently in place. This is super important to know all the programs, supports, and interventions that we have in place when kids start to struggle. They need to be known and used appropriately. This is important so we can assess if what we have is actually working. Are we doing a good job? And are we providing the right stuff? Here's the next activity. So to help you guys see all the things in the secondary school that we have in place, I'm going to have you explore the graduation supports programs document. So I'm gonna set up the computers for you. So while we do that, this is what it looks like. This is the document. And what I need you guys to do is y'all have a mouse and the document that's up.
Holy smokes. Ready to keep this? Can I take it home?
So take your mouse
Oh, I never.
and just hover it over just hover it over anything you want to know. Any program. There's 4 categories: there's secondary educational options, building supports and interventions, credit deficit recovery interventions, and secondary district interventions. Go ahead and explore, just hover your mouse over anything, and it gives you some information what kids it's good for, how to access it, what they gain from that. And I'll give you a couple of minutes, and my hope is that you find something in there that maybe you didn't know before, or you'd love to know more about. I'll give you a few minutes to go ahead and explore. Yeah, you don't have to click anything, just hover.
I'll just hover.
Yeah.
Just hover. Yep.
Oh, okay, over here.
Yep, just hover.
Oh, wow. Isn't it cool?
Open doors is a youth engagement program, so support students who are either already dropped out or pretty much at risk, they won't graduate on time and they're not coming into school. So we provide them opportunity through to house build that provides. There's other programs, a similar online thing, but provides for types of supports. And they're getting credits that way. Working. It's a little bit of fun. It's like taking care of thoughts and the rigor that's in.
Yeah.
Right, so but it's giving them the students, they are going to, they're getting access to. So I don't think they're the same, but it is giving them that completion. They set up part way too. They don't put them right into, let's take lots of focus, but they make a point to put them through courses they're successful at. And then they bring in some of their more rigorous. They do try to.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
You are graduating to.
I want to thank Kyle and Kyle for helping set that up. Yeah, I had a dream and they made it happen.
They were not in it all the way. But we've seen some.
Yeah,
good
you're
stuff.
trying to get one of these. I'm like, no, these are laptops.
Like, need some-
Yeah.
We.
How many
Not a
do you
graduate.
need?
Finished what they needed.
With new chairs.
What's it say?
So Eric doesn't like.
I'm fine.
I'm not the grader of the course.
So as you look at that, is anything coming out to you, something that you didn't know? Would like to know more about?
UW early entrance. program.
Yeah. UW early interest program. It's an excellent example.
How do you know I wasn't?
So while you guys, I'm sure you could spend another hour doing this.
Yeah.
I have a way you can do it on your own. Kyle's gonna help me. So if you guys, after Kyle's gonna take the computers and put them down, so I get your attention again. You get the pace.
Oh, man, I really liked it.
So if you look back on the big screen, these, all this, you guys have access to this. You can access it at home tonight. So this is set up and it's accessible by all secondary administrators and counselors because we have so many things happening. Sometimes you have students like, I don't know where they fit. What can I do? And this helps organize things. Because if we just look at some mental health supports alone, there's a great big list and what fits with what kid And that's impossible to remember everything. So if you guys want to explore this further, you go to our staff dashboard. Right up there at departments, or you give me a call and I can walk you through it. But you go to the dashboard, under departments and information, you click on that,
Sales.
a big list will come up, you go under G for graduation, click on graduation. And then you click on graduation supports and options. It will download the Excel file for you and open it right up, and you could explore it to your heart's content. Pretty easy, and you really can't mess it up because everything's protected, so if you're clicking in the wrong spot, it just won't go anywhere.
How long have we had that on the website? Has it been there?
It's
been there-
it's been there for a
Oh,
while,
okay,
and
yeah.
it'll stay there, and every now and then I have to go back and update it because there's some changes that happen.
I think it published in October.
Okay,
For the members of the public,
No, this is for staff, it's on the staff dashboard.
yeah, like Kevin, I didn't realize that UW early entrance, half of that stuff.
As you look at it, you can see that there is a ton of options. There's a ton of things that are happening in school. We have our basic education that's available, and then we have all these other things that you're struggling or need a different path that are there to support you. And I'm going to cover and talk about a few of those right now. So last, a couple more things we need to know is we need to know how COVID has impacted graduation. It's had a major impact. If we look at our current seniors, they showed up at ninth grade when COVID happened. They lost half of their ninth grade year. Their 10th grade year was spent online and was pretty void of any kind of school connection because sports weren't there. You couldn't hang out with their friends. Teachers taught the blank screens. In 11th grade, they had to kind of relearn how to do school. Lunches were still weird. Things weren't normal. Teachers are coming back and we're working with so many different things. So this year, the 12th grade year is their first kind of normal year. We call it normal, right? And if we go back, we look at our juniors, they were in 8th grade. Our sophomores in 7th and our freshmen were in 6th grade. They had the same impacts and they carry them with them. So they will continue to carry this. Any student, any teacher who's in school at the time of the pandemic will carry those impacts through that. So we're be impacted for the next 10 so years, right? So keeping that on the forefront. And in talking with principals and obviously being one last year, some of the biggest things that we've noticed outside of content gap is that students are super struggling with their motivation to be in school, right? They're struggling with the importance of why they need to complete their work. And then they're missing a lot of school. Some appointments that, in the past, to get a dentist appointment was for after school. Well, now it's during school. We got into that habit instead of just miss school, and all those things add up. If we look at graduation, there's also been a set of waivers and supports that the state has put in to help students graduate. And so this kind of shows the path of that. In 2020, 22 credits were necessary to graduate. Grades, that's the half year, grades were frozen in March. So a student that had a B in a class got a B on their transcript. It could go up to an A, but it could not go lower, right? So some kids just stopped going, right? There wasn't the state testing that year, so they put in an expedited appeal to take care of the kids that did not complete the state testing. And then they added the graduation requirement emergency waiver, the state added that. And that allowed kids to waive up to 2 credits, 2 core credits like a math and an English, or 2 elective credits, and require the kids to have 20 credits to graduate. There's other stuff that went along with that. Come to 2021, we now needed 24 credits to graduate, 2 more. As a district, we put in the local waiver, which is a waiver that's for extenuating circumstances, and it's listed down there at the bottom of the slide for what extenuating means. And the group grew a little bit. It was still 20 credits, still waived 2 core or electives, but they added, you could waive the graduation pathway, and you could waive Washington State history. That stayed the same for 20, 21, 22, and for this year. All those waivers are in place. After this year, it starts going away. Notice next year, still need 24 credits. We have a local waiver, but the GRU is only 1 core credit elective, and then it disappears. So this will impact our students because the credit requirement is going up. What I really want to point out on the slide is last year, 8% of our graduates had some form of GRU waiver. 8%. Without the GRU waiver, 8%, that would have been 8% that didn't make it, right? And that's from impact of COVID. Compared to the state, they were 12.9%, right? So we are still doing well. I keep on highlighting the amazing work that's happening in the district, right? So last thing that we really need to know is who's graduating and who's not. Are there groups of kids or populations that are not making it? And are there ways that we can predict as early as possible who might not be making it so we can support that student? You really need to know that. So the data on our who I'm going to cover in the next section. If we go to the research, what it shows is it's inconsistent. The one thing that's consistent across everything is the absolute best predictor of graduation is 9th grade success. Kids that pass all their courses in 9th grade are going to graduate, right? Freshmen, let's call that freshmen on track. Freshmen on track at the end of the year are 4 times more likely to graduate. That's a big deal. 9th grade success is a stronger indicator than race, ethnicity, poverty, or test scores. It's so big that OSPI tracks it and reports it every single year. In the 21-22 school year, the state is at 70% of their freshmen were on track, while at our district, we were at 80%. Well, we're always working for 100, right? It just shows that we are doing a good job. The research also shows that the 3 top reasons that students drop out is that they are missing too many days of school. They're absent too much. They believe it's just easier to graphic greener somewhere else, get their GED, and it's really not. And then either getting poor grades or they're failing, so they choose to leave school. Kind of addressing these reasons is we have a goal around attendance because these are so interrelated. If somebody's struggling in school, they skip, they might be struggling. But attendance, that's one of the goals that we're working on directly with strategic plan. Another one, strategic plan goal 3, is all about instruction. Getting kids for that and engaging them to participate in that instruction so they're not failing, so they're feeling successful. Those are big parts of our goal. Okay, the next question. Where are we now and how do we know? So this is where Kathleen's expertise is the best. I'm gonna see if I can got it all right. You guys have seen this graph before. This is our graduation rate since 2016. If you look at this bar right here, it's 91, that's our on-time graduation rate of last year, 91.3. The next bar is the 5 years. So if we look at 2021, we were at 92.6. It grew to 93.8. It grew 1.2%. Got that many more kids for that 5th year. The blue boxes, this one with the dashed line, that is the state's 4-year, and then above it is the state's 5-year. So you can see how we're doing according in comparison to the state as we go. This graph shows the importance of additional years in school. I'll start with class of 2019. Their on-time graduation rate was 90.5%. 5th year graduation rate went up to 92.7, gained 2.2%. A 6th year, they gained another percent, 93.5. And a 7th year, they gained another percent. So from the class of 2019, only 5.5% actually didn't graduate. And that's important to know when it looks like 9.5% was missing, which they were in year 4. When we keep working with these kids, we keep grabbing them, we keep getting programs to engage them in school and help them to get their diplomas. So after 7 years, it's really 5 to 6% of the students that are not making it. We're going to continue to work because we don't want to lose those kids either. This graph shows special populations of students. Over here on this far right, this is our graduation rates for 2020, 21, and 22. It shows the same information for, on the far left, low-income students, special education, bilingual, and homeless. All of these special populations, these special groups, their graduation rate is lower than our average graduation rate. That is something that we know and are concerned about and are addressing in every way that we can. But it's really not super simple to say, oh, let's just focus in on our special education students, because many of these students have compounding factors. Here's an example. This graph on the far left here, this is students that do not have an IEP. This first bar is students that are on a free and reduced, are low income students. They're graduating at 87.1. Students that are not low income are graduating at 91.6. That's 9% difference just by income alone. Now, if we look at students with an IEP, students that are on low income, students with an IEP are graduating at 72.9. Where if they're not low income, they're graduating at 91.4. So the IEP in itself does impact students, but not nearly as much as an IEP with a compounding issue such as low income. The IEP in of itself, we're doing a fantastic job. They're graduating at a higher rate than just students without an IEP that are on low income. It becomes a very tough issue to iron out. Where do we apply? Where do we help kids, right? Oh, if I go back to that slide, the super important thing is I could take out IEP and replace it with multilingual, replace it with homeless, replace it with race, and we see the same sort of impact when we start having compound issues, especially with low income. So where do we lose our kids? Who do we lose? These are our dropouts. Last year, we had 61 students who did not graduate between the two high schools. Out of those 61, 15 of them came back for a fifth year. We grabbed those 15. That's awesome. So that's a quarter of them. Out of these 46, 31 or 67% of these 46 kids were low income. Special education, 11 out of the 46. Homeless, 9 out of the 46. So you can see that many students have compounding issues when they're not making it. It's just kind of who's dropping out and how do we address it? This is information you need to know. We also need to know when are we losing our kids. The states, when we look at their statistics, they pretty much lose them in their freshman and sophomore year. This graph shows that we're holding on to most of them in our freshman and sophomore year. We're losing them when they're juniors and seniors. Seniors, I mean, we're losing in 54% as a senior. So we're holding on to them. We're doing something right, keeping them in school. Then we start losing them when they're older. And so that's important to know. So how do we help? How do we prevent that? What can we do? It's information we need. Here's another system that we have. We have an early warning system. And this is a fantastic system. And I think Kathleen is our mastermind who really works hard to give great information to students to school. We take the high school grades at transcript, their grades every semester, and goes into the system, and the system then ranks kids. They're green if they're on track, they passed everything. They're amber if they failed 1 or 2 or 3 classes, so they're a little behind. And they're red if they're 2 or more classes. That means they failed 4 or more classes, they're considered red. So this comes out to the counselors and administrators after every grading period, after every semester grading period, and they're able to look at this and say, who needs help? Who's falling behind? And try to provide supports. If we look at our current senior classes, where are we at right now? Bonnie Lake, this first graph of Bonnie Lake. Bonnie Lake is about 12.5% of our seniors are in red or 2 or more credits behind. At Sumner, it's about 15.5%, almost 16 of our seniors. When we so we're graduating in the low 90s. This is where we're at right now. We look at juniors, Bonnie Lake, we're looking at 13%. Sumner's looking at 10%. This is super important to know because how are we addressing this and what are we doing with these kids at this time? And this is more information out of each kind, but this is one of the things that we need to know where we're at, where we're right now. Where we're right now, we provide secondary schools with data monthly. This data comes in two different forms. It comes in school-wide. This is data that's pulled live from the grades, so we know what students are failing right now. It's provided monthly. They get school-wide data, and then they get freshman-only data, which is more complex because freshmen, we need to make sure they're successful. This data is so important that principals have scheduled an extra meeting every single month to do nothing but dive into this data and identify where needs are where the needs are, and to come up with interventions to address those needs. They have data workshop meetings every month to do this. This is an example of the data that would come, school-wide data. This is 10th grade English. You can see that there's 4 teachers, and you can see their grade distribution. You can see how many, so the top teacher has 51 kids that are in English 10, and has 2 that are failing. This kind of data is what we use, like when we interview assistant principals or administrators, and we say, hey, got this data. How might you use this to improve instruction to help kids graduate? They dive into it, they figure out what should we do. An example, and this is what our principals do monthly. An example is, if I take that same one, we have 2 out of F is 4%, 17 out of 92 is 18%, 10 out of 64 is 16%, and 14 out of 58 is 24%. You can see there's quite a range in the same course of students failing. So what might an administrator do with this? They may take it to the 10th grade PLC when they're doing their work and say, hey, wow, look at this discrepancy when you're all teaching the same thing, same standards, and we have common assessments. How can we figure this out, right? What are the strategies that are working in this class that may not be working in this class? Can they share their expertise? Also, can that group of teachers come together to intervene and make a difference for these kids? Because we don't want 24% of our kids failing, right? So that would be an example of intervention that happens. More data. This is the freshman data. This comes, and what this shows is, if I just, this is the population ratio. So 51% of boys, 49% of girls. You can see this one, this bar, 11% of our special ed students. The purple right here is our EL students. How many freshmen are on track on April 14th? 71%. This is one of the high schools. 71% of all the freshmen are passing everything. That meant 29% are failing at least 1 or more grades. If we look at boys, 67%, but girls are passing at 76%. Girls are doing better, right? So we can use that data. And then another set of data that comes with that is, out of, let's say, this 29% that are failing, how many are failing one class and how many are failing multiple classes? So when boys are failing more, and what we notice is that 35% are failing 1 and 65% are failing 2 or more of the kids that are failing, that shows that there's an area of interest, there's an area of need, there's an area that we need to address. Otherwise, those boys are in. This is the kind of data that they use monthly. So, kind of ending this part, the portrait of a graduate is extremely clear. A portrait of a non-graduate is not so clear. We have some generalities, you know, of who's struggling, like poverty, and when we lose them. But it's so individualized. When we start getting down to like 40 students, 60 students, it's super individualized about where they're falling out, and we still need to continue to work to get there. So how will we get there? We're going to use our strategic plan. The strategic plan, there are 4 pillars that describe the building blocks for actions, decisions, and organizing our work. For each goal, they outline some educational strategies. And so I want to highlight some particular strategies, one strategy for each pillar. Pillar 1, strong transitions. It's under teaching and learning, strong transitions, making sure kids are prepared as they move on to the next level. Right here is some of our current work. You're looking at the transition plan to kindergarten. It has dates, events, and the purpose of each step. Beth Dykeman, the elementary principal, did an amazing job ensuring that every student has an equitable transition plan, regardless of where they come from or what school they go into. Secondary schools are doing the same work, and you can see that their goals are right here. They have goals of making sure that the ultimate goal of being able to definitely outline the transition process and services that are provided at each level district-wide. So if somebody's coming from Lake Ridge to Bonnie Lake, they get the same transition services as if they're going from Lake Ridge to Sumner or Mountain View to Bonnie Lake. It's the same, because we know what students need and we want it. On pillar 2, safe culture and strong partnerships, a graduation coach. So what is a graduation coach? Graduation coaches are people who work with at-risk and credit deficit students. These students are often frustrated, disengaged, and on the edge of dropping out. Graduation coach provides hope and helps students see that their credit deficit is not unsurmountable. That helps students work through their barriers, teach problem-solving skills, and walk alongside them. This slide provides more information that you'll be able to read later. And so we do have a graduation coach. Her name is Jen Moody. She's been here for 2 years. Last year was a pilot year. And so we just started getting going. This year we solidified it, improved the position. We took what was working, added, incorporated best practices, and built a clear, structured program around it. She works with a caseload of students of at-risk kids that are off track. They include our homeless students, as well as any freshman who failed half their classes, any sophomore who failed half their classes as a freshman is automatically on our caseload. And here's some of the stuff that he does with them. So when we look at how are the results, we looked at this in March, and 82% of the students that she was working with are making progress. They're re-engaging, they're finding hope, and they're moving forward. 89% of the students that she's worked with that carried on caseload for over 2 years have made positive progress. That means there's no more backslide. They're closing that gap. These are students that could have lost. They're closing that gap. And if we look at her caseload, there's 21 students who've withdrawn. They've moved to other schools. Out of those 21, we followed them, and 86% are still in school. So we're building a foundation to keep them in school instead of losing them, even though they're leaving us. Pillar 3, professional learning. I want to bring your eyes down to the bottom. Social emotional growth of middle school and high school students and strong implementation of advisory programs. We've had advisory programs for a while, and they're under the direction of Aaron Common, and he's made some significant changes over the last couple of years and some positive strides. For the last number of years, advisory is limited to an hour, 20 times a year. And it was used in different ways in different buildings. This year, it's changed, and advisory is now 30 minutes every week, allowing students to have more contact with their advisor, which helps them to deepen relationships and giving them time to authentically connect. At the high school level, it's gone further. We have a clear scope and sequence that addresses social emotional learning, school culture, and this is primarily where the high school and beyond planning is done, which is a graduation requirement. The middle schools are following step, and so our advisory programs are getting stronger. On pillar 4, continuous improvement. So when we look at this, there's a graduation pathway. So we want to use our early warning system, which we have, to identify what's the best pathway for each student. Every student needs to be able to navigate high school in the way that works best for them. And so there is a road for everyone. So we have our early warning system. We have different graduation pathways depending on a kid's skill set and what they want to do. They can pick a different pathway, which changes their graduation credits that they're required to do and gets them across that line. We have strong CPE programs that provide foundational technical knowledge and skills. And we're even bringing in JROTC next year because that's another program that engages kids. We have online credit recovery. We have competency-based credits, which is kind of a new thing, but I really want to highlight the very last bullet, World Language Competency Test. We had 90 students last year who earned credit through taking this test because they know a different language, right? That's a big deal, right? There is a road for everyone. If you're more of a hands-on learner, there's the skill center. We have 107 students that go there, right? Running Start. You want that kind of flexibility and earn college credits? You can see how many students are participating in that. I really want to highlight Eli Hill. That program is tremendous. It's probably responsible at least a 3% increase of our graduation rates in and of itself. It's serving over 100 students. When it first started 12 years ago, the majority of the students were students in their 5th and 6th year, students who didn't make it and we're still trying to hold on to. They've worked that down where the vast majority of their students are in their 4th year, they're going to be graduating on time. They graduate over 50 students a year, and 95% of students that enter into that program graduate. That's a hell of a program. Gina does an amazing job, right? And last is Grad Alliance and Open Doors, and that's a program that reaches out and grabs those kids that we've lost and brings them back. You know, we talk about 6th and 7th year kids, and so far 5 students have graduated through that program that won't have graduated, that we lost, that we can hold on to. And so that's an amazing thing that we've tried to do. So other things to highlight, cover this really quickly, is of course, we're going to progress monitor our data, make decisions, but school improvement plans. These are a big deal. High school has written goals and action steps to increase our 9th grade success, as well as increase our graduation percentage on time. And those goals are direct alignment with our strategic plan. Everybody's working in the same direction. And I want to so highlight Eli's goal. Let me get there. One of their school improvement goals is every student will earn all credits they are enrolled in at Eli Hill program by the end of each semester. That's concrete, it's clear, and it's achievable. And they're doing that. That's just an amazing thing. And other programs, this is a lot of stuff that we do, but the extended learning opportunities and end of semester grade contracts, those are where a student failed the course at the end of the semester. The teachers have come up with ways for those students that were really close to give them extra time and support to recover that grade and recover that credit within that school year. And it's just an amazing job that's happening. Highlights, again, most important, goals 1 through 4, all support are necessary to reach goal 5. The work that Beth, Sarah O'Donnell, Steve Dolan, and Josh are all doing, they're doing the heavy lifting, right? So what do? We don't get there. How do we respond? So we're going to continue using all the programs and tools that we are now, all support that we currently have. Many things I highlighted, like Grad Alliance and Open Doors, early warning system, the work data workshop meetings, and competency credits, all those are in response to kids not performing. They're part of what we do. Overall, we're going to use the continuous improvement cycle at how we respond when we're not getting there. We're going to use data to identify students in need, kind of who need what. We're going to plan out our interventions to meet the needs of the students using research proven strategies. So that's the how, where, and when. Then we're going to implement the plan to the best of our ability, and we're going to gather data about how we're doing. And we're going to evaluate it. We're going to keep on going. It's step by step by step. Get that last few percent is extremely difficult. It's like when you first start a diet, you might lose quite a bit, and then as you get closer and closer to your goal, it slows down. Another way to look at it is if you're a sprinter, what we're wanting to do is PR, have a personal record every single race that we have. Every year we want a personal record, and that takes a lot of work and refinement and minute changes because it's so individualized for the students there. So we are doing great. We have a great system going on, and we're going to continue to refine and provide the additional individualized and ever-changing supports that students need. We will grab that last few percentage that we need. We will reach that 100%, and those kids deserve it. They deserve the work and the focus. So what we're seeing is this was persistence to graduate, goal 5, and that cap kind of says it all. It's a hello life, and this is our promise in action. So, any questions? A lot of information.
A lot of work.
Yes, very impressive. It's nice to see you pinpoint exactly what you need to do for each type of student, and I really appreciate that.
There's a lot of people working very hard to do
Oh, I'm
exactly.
sure there is. A long way.
Questions, Paul? Comments?
Sure. I'll start with one. I got others, but others will chime in. Great presentation. You really laid out the scope of, what, the impact of COVID as well. So that we could see that, well, you know, they gave us some waivers. And that helps the students actually graduate on time. Otherwise, you showed that an 8% lower, which was really shocking to me. And so you set us up so that we got to see all the issues that you guys are trying to solve. And I loved it by the time you got to the end where it pivots to show us what you're doing to meet the need. But my main question is over on page 20, where you had indicated that you lose a lot of the kids, or the ones that you are losing. I mean, you really don't lose that many kids, but the ones that you do lose, it tends to occur in 11th and 12th grade.
Yes.
Which is getting pretty late. And so one of my questions was, you know, as you see it, to be honest with it, I mean, what are some resources that potentially could help alleviate? Is it more counselors that could help them in the early years? For me, and I'm just talking here now, you know, I'll turn it over, but so on page 13, you had that basically that thing we got to play with that showed us all the different things that you guys are also doing to help these students. Which made me realize there's a lot of programs out there. Do you have enough counselors that can connect these programs with these students early enough so that they do have the persistence to graduate instead of feeling like in 11th and 12th grade, they're overwhelmed at that point and nobody's, you know, I know that you guys are trying to reach out and get them, but so long-winded to get to the question, what do you see might help?
I don't think that there's a program or something we can just implement that is going to meet the needs. It's the kids that are not graduating are so individually have such different issues that it's kind of like a case-by-case basis. We're doing all the big moves have been made. We have all the structures in place. Now it's just figuring out how do we tweak this? How do we catch this? How might we address this students? And every day that goes by, we learn a little bit more. And so a lot of the work that we're doing, we're saying, how is our EL program doing? Are we meeting these needs? And there's this constant continuous improvement cycle, and we get better at that. We get better at everything that we do. So I don't know if I have an answer about this would work.
Well, right,
What
you've described is very labor intensive.
Yes.
And on all levels. And so that's where the question comes from. I mean, is it a labor issue where a couple more bodies that might be able to spend more time with some of these students? You know,
I'm never going to say no to that. So I think that there's numerous different ways that we could approach that. More staff in different areas and making sure that if we are bringing in more staff, that this is how they're going to be used to be have the most impact, the highest effect positive on our kids is what we really need to do. And I think that as a district, and I've only been district office a year, I've already learned that if we can identify where that would be, we're going to be doing it, right? And so it's always just like the big pieces. Where do you move? What do you add that's going to have impact? What we don't want to do is just throw something.
Right.
Hey, just try this, right? Because that could be wasted money and it may not have any impact. We want to make sure that it's research proven and it hits the target that we needed to hit.
well, I was really shocked at that graduation coach. That's the
Yeah,
first
me
time
too.
I've heard of it,
Yeah,
and I
too.
was maybe a couple more of those. I don't know.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you
just
very
did bring
much.
that up, yeah. Good. I like the graduation coach idea.
Came from the strategic plan.
Well, you know,
It was a great presentation. You did a good job with it. And what I will say is something like this, that I cannot believe how far we've come from when I started. The detail of what you guys can present to us and show us, where we were to where we're at today is so much different. Because I think you guys take so much more time trying to figure out, you know, where those failures are, what they're, and how you're addressing them. Never did I ever see that when I started here. I mean, you guys have improved it so much that I think you know, I'd be surprised that, you know, it takes you to 26 to get to the 98%. I think you guys you put so much effort into it. It's amazing how much is in there.
I'm glad you said that, and I really want to take the moment to say, it's everybody in the district. And teachers are caring that way. Teachers are doing that in the classrooms, and we have fantastic teachers and we have fantastic administrators that put all this work together. They're in the trenches.
Awesome. Anything else? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anytime. Excited to get the next update too. Yes, thank you for joining us. Sorry to pick on.
Okay.
We're on camera. Okay, we're gonna move into board discussion. Anything you'd like to discuss?
I got nothing.
Paul,
Nothing for me.
Kevin, Deb. All right, here you go. We're gonna go ahead and move into executive session. For the purpose of discussing litigation and potential litigation, action is not anticipated following the executive.
Are we done?
How much time do you think? 30 minutes?
Yeah.
But we'll say 45 minutes.
Put it on,